change the display on the vertical axis to show last name and first name. See, remember we had that first name and we had the last name field, but we only used the last name field. In design, an important point to know in report design is that you'll oftentimes have multiple different fields which may not be immediately used through the wizard, but will be used in the report. And usually what we'll do is we'll use what are known as expressions, right? Calculations that do something. Not just necessarily calculate some numerical value, but maybe display a value in a certain sort of way, or whatever else, or maybe add a different color. All sorts of things. We're going to use an expression to basically add first name over here so users can see first name and last name so that our report becomes more clear. So I'm going to click Design. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on Chart Data right over there. Now this was sort of interesting. I clicked on Chart Data over here, and what happens is Chart Data has a category called Last Name within the category groups. So what this is saying over here is group by last name. Now I had an in-depth discussion on grouping, right? Where I said grouping is where you take the distinct value of some column or the distinct value of multiple columns combined. And I displayed that mechanism inside of my list tutorials that we had a little bit earlier. So right now, understand that by grouping, we took the distinct value for every single last name, right? And then what we did was we summed up the cells for 2008 and 2009 by that last name. All right, now what we're going to do over here is we're going to add the first name to it. Now we're still grouping by last name, but we want to display first name also. So let me show you how we actually do that. I'm going to right click on this first, and then I'm going to click on Category Group Properties. So I come to Category Groups where I've got the last name group. Now in Category Group Properties, I'm going to go to Label. Label tells me this is the way I want this to display. So I could have put anything in there for the display, right? All right, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hit the F of X button where I say, you know what? I want to define my own custom formula for what to display over here. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to add a classic concatenation function, which is where I bring together two terms, right, or two different strings or two different string terms like first name, last name. You guys see what I mean? Something like that. And I'm going to hit and space. This is classic concatenation, and then I'm going to use double quotations, comma, space, double quotation, which symbolizes basically add a space and then add a comma. And then I'm going to do another space, and I'm going to put and right over there, which basically says add some other field, and then space again, and then fields. And I'm going to tell it now for the fields, I want to display fields first name dot value. Fields first name dot value was that unused column that we had brought in earlier. What we're doing over here now is we're going to take the value of that unused column that actually matches the last name value, and we're going to include it inside of the display results. So this doesn't affect the grouping. It only affects the display, but our users need that for cleaner reports. So I click OK. Now I'm going to turn around and actually click OK over here. Now I'm going to click Run. And look at that. There's Zing, Jeffrey, there's Joachim, John, and we can see now the comma, the space, and then the first name. So now we've actually concatenated this much cleaner at this point. All right, so we've got that done on the first part. Now let's go a little bit further. Sometimes, looking at this right now, sometimes our users need to see sorting. Wouldn't it be nice if our users could say, you know what? I can actually see that, this is sorted by the first name, the second name, the third name, the fourth name. And sorting really becomes important whenever you have lots of values or something, so that users can easily find the value that they need very quickly. So let's go ahead and sort this over here for our users, essentially. Sort these actual category groups, and let's choose some sort of sorting formula for them. I'm going to click Design. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and double click the chart again to bring up what's known as the Chart Data tab, which tells me essentially the values and the groups that are being used. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come back to Category Groups. I'm going to find last name again, because that's my only group anyway. Right click on it, and then left click on Category Group Properties. Now I'm going to click on sorting over here. So this is where I can define sorting right here. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on the FX button. Okay, so for sorting now, I'm going to give it my own custom formula. And instead of sorting by just last name, what I'm going to tell it to do is actually sort by last name and first name. So very handy sort, with classic sort that you'll do, by the way. So here's an and, space, there's a double quotation, comma, then I'm going to put in another space, and then there's a double quotation, and then space, and then and again. So I'm saying sort by first name and, or last name and first name. So I'm going to put in fields again, so that's the column right there, and then first name dot value right over there. Now I'm going to click OK. After that, I'm going to go ahead. After that, what I'm going to do next is look at the order part, and I'm going to tell it to not only sort by this, but I want it ordered in descending values. So I want it going from, Z to A in this case, instead of A to Z. So another very little handy tip to get down. We haven't done that yet in any of the other tutorials, so you're seeing how to sort right over here, or how to sort by multiple different values by essentially using an expression, which you can do. Let me click OK. Now let me click Run. Now notice what's happened over here. So now it sorts by last name and then last name and first name, as you can see over here. So there's Alvacara Lewis, and you can see where it sorts by every single one of those terms essentially. That's very, very handy whenever you don't have unique, that's very, very handy whenever you need to actually, whenever you don't have unique last names or something like that. That can be very beneficial. Grouping will naturally try to make things unique, but it depends upon what you group by. If you group by one column, yes, every value is going to be unique like what we've got over here. But had we grouped by two columns, it would have been possible to have last names that essentially were in common with other, were in common while having different first names. So everyone see that over there. So this is our actual sorting. So cool. Wow, what a very nice tutorial that we have today. All right, so we're going to do bar charts today. And once again, this is one of those modules where it's not just about how to make these charts like this that appear as bars, that actually span horizontally. It's about other things too, like how to filter them, how to be able to display only certain values, how to go about sorting, how to do things like change the position of a label. These things apply to more charts than just bar charts. So you learn all these little tricks in this particular module, and all these little things that will really enhance your report making capabilities. And that's going to be extremely significant, because in the next module after this we get into spark lines, which are then going to enhance this even more. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this particular tutorial adding a bar chart using Report Builder, and get ready because this will be a lot of fun. Alright, so first I'm going to go in over here, and for those of you who are just now joining in, I've been using a SharePoint 2013 environment that I built the night before I started these demos. Got it up pretty quickly and fixed a bunch of errors, and then got it working essentially, and that's what I've been doing. But like I said, I'm going to probably go back and perfect it a little bit more, especially when I get started with the some of the other BI tools. I'm going to have to make some adjustments to it. It's been a very busy time lately. So I'm going to click on Report Builder Report in SharePoint 2013. And also, for those of you that are brand new, you don't have to use SharePoint 2013 for this. You don't even have to use SharePoint. You just need Report Builder. But, I chose to use SharePoint 2013 just to give it a new sort of, feel for displaying this functionality with SQL Server 2012 and with SharePoint 2013, because it was new, while we wait for Report Builder to come up. And Report Builder should have came up. Let me just click on it again. I could have just manually brought it up, but I prefer to do it this way. And let me see over here. Thought it was coming. I was clicking on my particular part. It doesn't usually take this long. Let me refresh this site. There we go. And then let me click back on Files and launch it from here. There we go. There it is. So click Open. Just needed a refresh on the browser. As I said before, my SharePoint is not completely configured, so please forgive that. Remember, you don't have to use SharePoint for this too, so just keep that in mind. And also too, these tutorials will also work with SQL Server 2008 R2, the majority of them, so keep that in mind also. Okay, now coming back over here, we've got our report coming back, and we're going to go back to our chart wizard that we've used now for the last few tutorials. So that helps us create reports. And the first thing we're going to do is create a data set, right? So I'm going to click next so we can get the set of data that our reports will actually use. And then first I'm going to make a data source, which I've said for the umpteenth billionth time, right? Not really. The data source over here, you know, you can think of it, you know, like a bridging between two APIs to allow communication of data. But a real easy way in layman's terms is just the stored text that has the username and password, or at least the type of security, like Windows Integrated Security, the name of the database, and the name of the database server to find the database. So there's AdventureWorks 2012 DS, AdventureWorks 2012 data source. Now I come down to Microsoft SQL Server, then I'm going to click Build. Then I'm going to just put localhost, and I could choose any database that I want over here because of the nature of the query. Now in real life, I said that's not true. In real life, you will be choosing a database that actually contains the data that you need. Here, I'm just running things against what's known as the database engine, which basically executes my queries for me. I'm going to hit credentials over here. And then for credentials, normally you wouldn't have to put this in, but I said before that I'm not done configuring my SharePoint 2013 image. So I'm going to go ahead and put in, put over here, I'm going to put in Brandon Demos. And then a dummy username that I gave it just for the purposes of doing some of these demos over here, demonstrations. And I'll just use them as Windows credentials so I don't actually use Kerberos over here. And I promise I'm going to throw Kerberos on my server 2012 as soon as I get a chance to. Okay, there we go. And I'll click Next. Now I'm going to use the query over here. So first we need to get a data set. All right, and I said a data set is basically, while you're in design time, the columns that you're working with, also known as fields, right? Columns are known as fields. And then I said that when you run it, it's actually the set of data that your report's using. So during design time, it's when you're dragging and dropping columns. During runtime, it's when you're actually bringing in the data from those columns. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here for the query.